I live on sand, so I've been learning over the past 10 years what grows in sand, and it's not complimentary. But anyway, I'd like to have you talk to us about
Soils.
yes, about soils.
Okay, well, one of the things, the organization that I belong to, as I said, is their mission is to educate, and one of the pamphlets that we produce is called Discovering Eco-Landscaping, and it talks about the basics, things that, and it's very accessible. It's not full of jargon, and it talks about just the basics, and soil is one of them. And it's really critical piece.
So should we be doing soil testing?
We should, and actually, our cooperative extension, UMass Amherst, has you can go online, it's www.umass.edu/soil test, and they actually have a form that you can fill out, and they give you instructions on how to take the soil test and why it's important to take the soil test, and they give you some options. And why it's important to test your soil is so that you will get optimum plant production, growth, to protect the environment from contaminants, aid in the diagnostic of cultural problems, too wet, too much iron, too little this, too little that, to improve the soil's balance, and also to identify contaminants like lead and other unhealthy things that are in the soil.
Very good.
And as I said, on the form that you can download off the website, they then tell you, they give you some options of, you can do, one of the tests could be for a lawn, one could be for a veggie garden, one could be for a landscape situation, for beds, shrub beds and such. And
so if you had lead in the soil, you can do something to remove it?
Well, particularly in older houses and neighborhoods like in Newton and other places, when people had money and they had their houses painted frequently, in the old days they would put down the drop cloths, they would scrape off all the old paint, it would fall in the soil, and they wouldn't bother to sweep it up, they would repaint. And so in older communities, and where that tended to be more well-to-do, lead is really a problem. So in those situations, you wouldn't want to plant a vegetable garden.
Okay.
And particularly root vegetables like carrots and potatoes and turnips and things, because those would be taken up, the lead would be taken up into those, and then you would ingest it.
Wow.
So I used to live in Metro West, I'm now down in Buzzards Bay. I had lots of clients in that situation. So what we would do is we would put down some landscape cloth, and then we would make raised beds and fill it with good soil.
Very good.
And then we would also I would encourage them not to plant root vegetables. But
really? Even in the raised bed?
Yep,
okay.
that they
It would
could
still
do
leach?
tomatoes,
Okay.
yes. So just to be on the safe side, and many of them had children, and lead is not a really bad thing, as we know, for kids.
Yes,
so,
sure.
So this, there are several tests. You can just get a test that shows you what your pH is, which tells you how acidic or alkaline your soil is. And if it's too acidic, then plants aren't able to take up the nutrients that they need.
Very good.
And that's what is harmful to edible crops, but also to the landscape plants. And if it's too sweet or alkaline, that also binds up some of the nutrients that the plants will need to be healthy. And so a soil test is important for the pH. But the second one is the one that I typically order when I'm doing soil tests for my clients. And it also tells you, excuse me, about the kind of amendments you have to make and if there's enough organic matter.
Good.
Because when you were talking about sand, one of the things that plants need is a medium, a good soil that's going to hold water and nutrients. Sand is very porous, water goes through very quickly, and there are some xeric plants that really like that, some of the cacti, and we even have a native prickly pear, which is that we can grow here in New England. They find it up in the White Mountains.
Very
they
good.
find it along the beaches. So, but there are other plants that do like a sandier soil. But typically, if you want to plant things that you see in many of perennial borders, etc., or shrubs, and even vegetables, you are going to have to amend the soil. And they give you recommendations on the soil test.
Excellent.
So follow the directions, and then you mail it off. And usually, this time of year, they're very busy. So it could be anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks before you get the results back. But
so it's best to do it early so you can plant
early as possible. And do not fertilize before you take this because it will give you a false reading. So this is a
Very
really
good.
wonderful
Sounds practical.
thing that you need to do.
Do you do companion planting?
I do. I don't do a lot of vegetable gardening myself. I have a very shady property where I am
Okay.
now, and it was also true when I lived in Metro West.
Right.
But I do know that a lot of the herbs and marigolds around your vegetable garden
Right.
are supposed to keep some of the bugs away or attract
Right.
them. When I had a beautiful perennial border, I was plagued by Japanese beetles.
Okay.
And one of the things that Japanese beetles also love are 4-o'clocks. And 4-o'clocks are really kind of, they're not delicate, but they're beautiful. They have a nice fragrance, and they come out fragrance, and they come out at 4 o'clock. And Japanese beetles happen to like them very much as well. So
Sure.
I took a back corner and I planted a lot of 4-o'clocks that really attracted the Japanese beetles more than some other things.
Oh, really?
And I was
Oh,
able
wow.
to pick them off, put them in the soapy hot water, and get rid of them that way.
Oh,
And some of
good.
my more prized horticultural beauties were not all chewed up by and skeletized
Very
by the
good.
beetles. So,
Very good.
yes.
But it's important to know what to do and how to do it.
Absolutely. And you know, the one thing too about today, we're talking about ecological landscaping, but there's so many good pamphlets, books, websites out there, and I will mention some later, that you can go to find all of this great information.
Good. Good.
UMass, as well as having this sheet available, also there's a lot of information on there of how to interpret your soil test and some things that you can do. So there's great information available.
Wonderful.
Things that you would have to go to the library before for even 25 years ago, 15 years ago.
Sure.
So there's a lot, and companion planting is something that's really hot now too.